So, let's start with the next session. This one is a panel discussion with 5 great speakers. Again, they are here to share with you their experience as doctorate holders having left academia, I would say, and some of them have also an experience abroad. As I told you, they are here to share their story with you. And I'm going to ask all of you to present briefly who you are and what you have done until now. So basically, your academic and professional background until now.
I start? Thank you. Hi, I'm Christiana Avila. I hold a PhD in history, so I think I'm the only SS Social Sciences and Humanities representative in this panel. I have studied history in Germany at the University of Freiburg, where I also did my PhD. And I've come to France 2 years ago, just after the PhD, where I now work for a small research cooperation foundation, the RFIEA, Réseau Français des Instituts d'Études Avancées. We're based in Paris, and I am project leader for a research funding platform called funded.fr.
I am Margarete REMMERT-RIEPER. I am based in Hamburg at TUTECH Innovation, which is a technology transfer company of Hamburg University of Technology. I started my academic career in studying chemistry and did a PhD in physical chemistry centuries ago, almost. So I finished in 1994. Shit, no one will believe me that I'm 20 anymore. This was definitely a hard time for women, which I knew. But I counted that all male chemists would be absorbed by the 3 large chemical companies. But it didn't work out because we had a recession before 2008. 1993 also was the recession. No chemist got a job, so I had to struggle around, do lots of different jobs and keep my market value high. I also did my own company, which finally led me into my current position with TUTECH Innovation. So since 10 years now, more than 10 years now, I'm working on European projects, on innovation management consultancy, and on mainly related also around education for early stage researchers.
So, good morning. My name is Oliva Schmidt. I'm currently an associate professor of political science at the Center for War Studies at the University of Southern Denmark. So I'm also a social scientist, I guess. As you can know, I'm currently back into academia, and you might wonder why I'm here on that round table. But before coming back to the dark side of the force and to research, before doing my PhD in international relations, I worked for the United Nations for a couple of years, and while doing my PhD, I was working for NATO in Brussels and in Afghanistan, so I have some experience in working for and in international organizations and how they approach the entire PhD experience, let's put it that way.
Hello, my name is Caroline. I'm from France. I have a background in biochemistry, and I did my PhD in Germany in microbiology. After that, I wasn't quite sure whether I wanted to continue in academia or do something else. I could choose between academia and working in an SME in Brussels, and I chose the latter. So they needed a microbiologist for a FP7 project. So that's when I started to know a bit more about the dark side of the forest. I learned about sustainable development. I learned about biomimicry. And this motivated me with a former colleague to create a company to put into practice biomimicry, and we are now developing a soil remediation solution which is bio-inspired and which is using mycelium. So I'm the co-founder of NOVOBIOM, the society, the company which is going to develop and commercialize the solution. I also represent an NGO based in Brussels called Biomimicry Belgium to promote biomimicry in Belgium. And I'm part of a wider network of biomimicry professionals in Europe. And I'm also a mom-to-be.
Hello. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Debra ZYSS. I'm 39 years old. I'm a Parisian born and bred. I graduated from the engineer school called Agro Paris Tech, but I was more interested into basic science and biology actually. So after that, I went on to do my PhD. I went to Montpellier to have a little bit of sunshine and the sea, and it was wonderful. So I have a PhD in cell biology, quite fundamental basic research. And after that, I really wanted to go abroad. I wanted to pursue a career in science. Maybe I was a little bit naive. And I chose to go to the UK because it was not too far from France. I was not brave enough to, go to the US. So I stayed 5 years in the UK, which is quite long. But it was quite a tough experience because my mentor was on a 5-year tenure track, and so, as you can imagine, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. Maybe we can discuss this later. So I came back to Paris and I did a little break. I needed to think and mature my professional project, learn how to polish up my CV and really do some personal thinking, which I did not have time to do when I was a postdoc because I was on the bench, at the bench almost 24/7. And I'm now working for ANR, which is the French National Research Agency. So it's an administrative job, but my PhD is still useful, and I don't regret this choice. I wanted to do a transition from academia to more policy-based administrative job. And so what I'm doing is organizing and managing a call for research proposals in health and biology, both at the national and at the European level.
So because you already mentioned a little bit what you're currently doing, my next question will be, can you tell us exactly what you do, what is your job about, what's your daily life in your position, and maybe for you, Olivier, a little bit more focused on your experience in this international organization and not necessarily in your current position.
I can start. So, as I mentioned, I am working for a research cooperation foundation, which means I'm working in research management. I haven't completely left the world of research, but I'm now sort of supporting researchers, especially social science and humanities researchers. I have been recruited by this small foundation, RFIEA, which you don't need to know. No one does, they're really small. But they have sort of developed this web platform called funded.fr, and they needed a content manager to actually put the content on the website to find funding opportunities for social sciences researchers worldwide. So I was recruited basically Googling funding opportunities, fellowships, and so on, and putting them on the website. That was the first part of my job. And it has since developed. I have been promoted project leader of this platform, which means I have now budget responsibilities for this project, I am developing a communication plan, so I've got this communication competencies as well. We are trying to develop several partnerships, so we're trying to enlarge the platform to other disciplines and other fields of research. And I'm sort of negotiating with possible partners, institutional partners in France and abroad, to build up this kind of partnerships. And I also have one intern, which I am encadré, I don't know how to say that in English, orienting. So that's sort of the competencies and my daily job. We're a very small team. I'm working in close collaboration with one colleague, which I very much appreciate, because during my PhD, at least in the social sciences, we are very lonesome wolves, and I was often feeling very lonely alone with my computer. And my current job is something that's very much in collaboration with one or two colleagues, which I very much appreciate. Yeah, I think that's all.
So what I'm doing exactly is the wrong question, because I also would like to do what I'm doing exactly. But let me put it into 4 strands. So the first strand, which I've started with at TUTECH, is I'm involved in development of trainings. I started with an innovation management training program for small and medium enterprises. It was a project funded by European structural funds. And then I pursued this with other kinds of workshops more related to European, to early stage researchers. And as I had been self-employed before, I always had an interest in earning money also, and earning my own salary. And so what I did is I started to transform these workshops, which were originally funded by European money. I started to transform them into something sustainable, which is still on the market. So the one workshop that was, the funding ended in 2008, and we offer the workshop still. So developing these workshops, doing these workshops on my own, and finding constantly new topics is one of the strands. The other strand is that I support researchers at Hamburg University of Technology or Industry in writing convincing proposals for Horizon 2020, for the European funding. So they deliver the excellence, and I deliver the translation from scientific excellence to value in the world on the one hand, and to and the match to the interests of the funder. And the third strand has been funded by the Enterprise Europe Network. I have the pleasure that I'm allowed to spend 7 of my working days with one SME at the time, and accompany them on their way to improve innovation management capacity. The last but not least strand, which is currently developing, is I managed to become deputy head of our department. And I'm currently strongly involved in all the leadership issues, which we are doing on a very, very interactive basis. And I'd like to highlight this because I think sooner or later, most of you will have to leave research and will have to also head for other tasks.
Can you hear me well? Or, okay. I had different jobs because we're in different organizations and in different positions, so I'll try to explain them as much as I could. Working for the United Nations in Geneva, I was part of a center called Center for the Democratic Control of Armed Forces. And what they are doing is what we call security sector reform. The idea is to try to develop and institutionalize in a number of countries the parliamentary and democratic means to control the security sector in general, whether the armed forces, the police institutions, and the intelligence services. Because I'm not going to lecture you on this, but you can easily assume that in a number of countries, those very strong security services can have a disruptive effect on political life. So the entire purpose of the Bureau is to try to foster and develop those institutions. And what we're doing was basically training programs. So going into countries and train either member of parliaments to explain to them what a standard democratic control procedure looks like and what they would like to have implemented as in terms of legislation. So it will be legal training, but also for the armed forces themselves or the security services, you know, what you are supposed to do in terms of basic respects for human rights, torture, interrogation, these kind of issues. And in that context as well, you are doing sometimes it's very basic training in terms of what international humanitarian law is providing, and most of them actually don't know that. So we developed a number of packages, training packages, which were first sent out and distributed for people to read. There was a number of small memos, 2-pagers, you know, that we will develop and circulate, and develop training programs either for MPs or for the security services. When I worked for NATO, I worked in 2 different positions. The first one was in the International Secretariat in Brussels. I was part of the operations division, and were in particular monitoring the Afghanistan intervention, which was full speed at the time. When you work for an international secretariat, you basically have 2 different tasks. You have to realize that the entire policy process is driven by the political agreements between states. And it's member states and the diplomats who represent them that actually agree on something that you have to implement afterwards. So a part of the job is to facilitate the discussions and the negotiations between diplomats. So you have weekly, bi-weekly meetings of 28 member states, and your job as part of the International Secretariat is to circulate in advance, you know, topic on the agenda. States will want to have things on the agenda, and you are the one who are centralizing everything. Sometimes part of your job is when you know that a specific policy item will be discussed or controversial, you have behind the door conversations with diplomats to try to facilitate the negotiations, the official negotiations that is going to take place. And you are supposed to facilitate the entire discussion and negotiation itself, including taking notes and circulate the memorandum. So that's one part of the job, facilitate the daily job of state interactions. The second part of the job is policy implementation. When something is developed and is agreed upon by the member states, you are supposed to follow up and make sure that the NATO bureaucracy, which is huge and slow and cumbersome, aligns with what has been decided. And the second job I had was in Afghanistan, working for the senior civilian representative, which is basically the, it was supposed to be the political NATO representative, but in fact, the main principal agent, let's put it that way, was the commander of ISAF, so the military forces. So we had the senior civilian representative had a small team of 20 people who were supposed to facilitate the entirety of the political process between NATO and the Afghan authorities. My specific job was to monitor and facilitate the training of the Afghan security forces, so the armed forces and the police forces, which was, as part of the ISAF mission, taken charge of by member states. So Germany was training, for example, the police, a number of other states, France, US, the UK, were training the armed forces. And my job was to try to monitor all this, try to give it some coherence, and report back to the senior civilian representative, who will then, depending on what was going on, take it up with the commander of ISAF or up the chain of command. That was pretty intense because it's a small team, and you work in a compound, or you are in on the field with surrounded by military personnel around you all the time. So I mean, you don't sleep much for 4 to 5 months, but that's just how it is. That's part of the job. So it's all very different types of activities that you can undertake. And so there is no single one international organization type of experience. It really depends on the posting you have and the job you have, and of course the bosses and colleagues you have.
So back to soil remediation. Guess what I'm doing at the moment? I'm writing a grant proposal. So, well, and why am I doing this? Because a few months ago, well, I was back at the bench, reaching the first proof of concept for the technology. So we had reached a milestone, and now we need a second round of funding. So, which is why I'm back at writing and setting up different types of activities within a research program in the hope to convince regional funding agency at the Walloon region. So yeah, what I'm doing is thinking strategically of where I want this technology to go, how to place it on the market of soil remediation, together with my colleague who is more on the business side. But of course, I have to think about the research and innovation agenda and what we want to do with this technology and how much more innovation we want to put in it. So it's not really different from what you would do in academia when you plan to work with colleagues in a consortium within Europe. But it's just that your topic is, well, in between innovation and something that is really applied. So you can think about a bit of fundamental research, but you really need to describe all the applied side and how much job is it going to create, and in terms of economic value and market potential.
Maybe just another question to you, Caroline. Can you tell us why you decided to create your own company?
Why did I decide that? At the end of my experience at this SME in Brussels, I had discovered many things. I mentioned sustainable development, but in fact it means learning about the state of the planet, which is really bad. So once you know that and you know all the facts, you cannot just do nothing. And at the same time, because I was in this SME with a weird bunch of people, so ecologists, people from GDF Suez wanted to make amends, and so I don't know what it is to work in a real corporate environment, and I didn't feel like doing that. And in the end, I felt that I really wanted to work on my own project. So it's probably not the easiest choice, but at least you really do it for yourself. It's your project. So that's the motivation, and what drives me is do something for the planet, really.
Okay, so well, at ANR we receive grant proposals, and my job is to organize the evaluation of all the submitted proposals. So it's very, very administrative. I'm really far away from the bench, but I do interact with scientists. I receive all the proposals, so I have a global view of what's being done in a certain domain, which is really interesting. I also have to organize panels of experts So I meet, you know, key opinion leaders and people coming from very different backgrounds, people from the industry, because I was also involved in the funding of public-private partnerships in biology, which is something that I'm very much interested in. So you learn a lot of things. You are far away from the bench. You are in front of your computer. You can, you know, sometimes I can move a little bit if I have to go and meet a consortium, especially when they have problems, because we don't only organize the selection of grant proposals, but there is also a scientific follow-up, which is also very interesting. And now at the European level, you know, it's about liaising with the other countries which have their national agencies, participating into a call for proposals. So for the moment, I'm involved in an ERANET, which is one of the funding, you know, one of the programs in the framework program Horizon 2020, sorry. And it's about cardiovascular diseases, and we just opened, no, not yet, but we announced the opening of a call for proposals for young researchers on cardiovascular diseases. So now it's going to be about, you know, again, selecting the proposals, organizing the meetings, gathering the experts, and there is also parallel activities that are interesting. It's about organizing a strategic research agenda. So again, facilitating, I think it's a good, very good word, facilitating the exchange of ideas between experts so that they come up with an agenda for, let's say, the next decade, what should be funded in a certain domain, and how, and what are the strategic actions that have to be implemented. I hope this is clear enough.
Still regarding your position, or former position in your case, what do you like the most and what you dislike?
Okay, I'll go first. What I think I liked the most was the diversity in the job, in the jobs themselves, in the sense that you have a different topic to deal with almost every single week. There is a degree of excitement as well, because there is something that is quite gratifying. It's the fact that you can see a policy process being implemented. And when you see that happening, it's, you say, well, okay, now I see where it comes from, and I participated in that. That's quite nice. What I disliked the most is that, well, you know, as a social scientist, there is one thing you learn, which is that human organizations are very bad at learning and usually make the same mistakes over and over again. And you see that a lot. You end up every couple years with the same debates, the same proposals, because people change in the organizations, so the knowledge is being lost. There is almost no procedure for in-house knowledge storage, basically. And it's the same for every single inter-organization you can think about. And at some point, there is a degree to which you realize that you are sort of caught into this wheel, and it becomes very frustrating. And as I was mentioning, it's very gratifying to see a policy process being implemented, but it doesn't happen that often, because moving a large bureaucracy is difficult. It's quite difficult. And the last thing is that working for an inter-organization, you are much more dependent on the political climate than you are working for like a national bureaucracy. In a national bureaucracy, you are to some degree dependent on how the political priorities are being set up. it's multiplied by the number of states within an inter-organization, which can make it also quite frustrating.
I can maybe just continue on that. But I'm going to start with things I like, to start with a positive thing, which I like. I'd say it's three things. I like having colleagues, I like having diversity, and I like having, strangely enough, deadlines. Because on this last thing, which I found very frustrating during my thesis, that you don't really have a deadline. You've got like funding for 3 years, and then nobody asks you what you're doing until at the end of those 3 years. You need to have a book ready. Whereas now you've got much shorter deadlines, you've got meetings and reports to submit, and I find that much easier to deal with, actually, having shorter deadlines and having smaller tasks, having more diverse tasks as well, which I very much appreciate, and being able to work in a team, even if it's a very small team, and being able to benefit from each other's very complementary competencies as well. I've mentioned we've got an intern in our team. She's a student in communication, and she's way more competent than I am, for example, in everything that's social media and communication and all that. And it's very, very nice to be able to benefit and to just sort of discharge some of the tasks on someone else. And that's something I didn't really experience during the thesis. What I dislike, or what I miss maybe more, is being able to enter very profoundly into a subject, which is obviously something you can do when you're working on a thesis or on a research project. That's something that's less possible now, and I sometimes regret that. Things remain more superficial. You've got less time for things, for projects or whatever. And the other thing is, which I would confirm what Olivier said, you are stuck, at least in my case, sometimes you feel stuck in a very institutional, very rigid institutional setting, very rigid political setting as well. Our foundation is being funded partly by the French Ministry of Research. So this spring, when there were elections in France, nothing happened for like 6 months because everybody was waiting for the results of the elections, and then of the regional elections. Then it's like, oh, come on, people, when can we sort of finally take decisions? And you had to wait until all the political offices were sort of in place in order to keep working. And that's sometimes a bit frustrating, having to wait for other institutions to take their decisions before you can take yours. That's a learning process, but I did find it a bit frustrating at the beginning.
Okay, so I can continue. What I also like most is the interaction with humans and the pleasure that I have the pleasure to work with humans who are engaged, who really love their job, and who really want to bring their jobs forward. This includes my colleagues, which are fantastic, and this also includes my customers, the scientists, as well as the owners of the small and medium enterprises, which also teach me a lot. What I also like is that no day is like the other day, so I learn a lot of different things and can share this knowledge and bring this knowledge to people. I'm struggling with what I dislike, because of course I dislike things during the day and during the week, but I usually forgot quite quickly what I dislike about jobs. So I don't answer the question.
For me, what I enjoy most is being able to meet different kinds of people from different disciplines. When you deal with biomimicry, then it's really multidisciplinary. So you get to meet people from the social entrepreneurship sector, from innovation, from big companies, people who are in the process of creating a startups, and within NOVOBIOM, then we get to learn about the environment sector. And it's always really nice to see that what you're doing, it speaks to them, and that, yeah, what you do is really relevant. What is not so nice is that you are still dependent on the political and regional agenda to get funding, and you have to fit in a box, which is usually what we don't want to do with this bio-inspiration approach. So at some point you really have to, again, try to fit in and forget about what you really want to do, but try to look the way people expect you to, so that it fits in the funding line and people can sometimes get what you do in administration, and they really need to be reassured that budget is going to be spent in the way it has to be. So every time you have to tell a story. So yeah, this is the most frustrating for me.
I think I already told you that what I like about my job is the diversity. I get to see a lot of different types of projects, and yeah, I liaise with a lot of different people. INR is a very nice place to work, I think. The atmosphere, for me, it's the human factor is quite important, so it's very nice. It's, yeah, it's, you still have, you know, freedom to be creative, even though, yeah, administrations are very rigid, and we depend on our Ministry of Research, who tells us what we should do and how we should do it. So yeah, going to the less nice or the disadvantages, you are really far away from the bench, so it can be, you know, when you are passionate about science, it's sometimes a bit frustrating. So it's, you know, I made that choice, but I still sometimes regret it a little bit, I have to admit. And sometimes the job is a little bit repetitive, of course. It's, you know, it's administrations, it's you know, when you facilitate, you have to, you know, work with a lot of Excel sheets and huge amount of data. Sometimes you don't have time to go really into the details of the proposals, even though you would like to. And yeah, that's it, I think.
So let's move to the recruitment process in your case. So for you, Caroline, maybe the different steps of the creation of your company. Can you tell us how you did get recruited, and maybe the focus on the asset of your PhD? Was it a real asset for your recruitment or for the creation of your company? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
So in my case, of course, because we're dealing with, we're in the biotechnology, clean technology sector. So the fact that I have a PhD in microbiology is absolutely, well, it's relevant, and it was a prerequisite, of course. But, well, it couldn't have been me alone. My partner, he's my business partner. He has a background in management, environmental science management, and basically business and science. So he's the one able to deal with making a business plan, dealing with the numbers, which is also absolutely necessary when you want to convince that your idea and your technology is relevant. So it's, in my case, it's rather about putting together the right combination of people, and work in synergy. What was the other part of the question?
The different steps in your case of the creation of your company.
So the company was created this year in February. So it's really at the startup stage. Before that, we got a grant that enabled us to do the R&D for 2 years. Well, the process was a bit special because this is not a university spin-off. since I was out of academia at that time. The idea did not stem from academia, but the type of funding we got allowed us to be hosted at the university. So that was the Université Catholique de Louvain in Wallonia. And yeah, it was a special funding scheme which allowed a company to own the IP. So no IP comes from the university, which makes it a bit tricky because this is not the linear and normal way to fund a startup or to create an activity from academic research. So which is why it's also a bit difficult for us because we don't fit in a special box or in a normal way things are getting funded, but it's okay. I hope that there will be more projects that are going to arise from people who have an academic background but who decided to do something else after their PhD. They have the knowledge, although they're very specialized. I mean, each of us, we are really specialized, but we have been trained to do complex things and to learn a lot. So there is really no reason why we shouldn't try if we want to do something. I mean, at the end of the PhD, I thought I didn't know much, or I didn't know what I could do, but in fact we can do a lot of things as long as we like it.
So you asked about the how I have been recruited. There had been a call, a job offer for this specific project in 2006, but I hadn't seen it. And but on the other hand, at that time, I had my own company, a consultancy company, and had worked in a network on sustainable construction. During this network of sustainable construction, I got to know one person of TUTECH Innovation and did some freelance job for them. And one day, he told me, we have this meeting and you need some extra time, 1 hour of extra time. And I say, okay, it's fine. And after the meeting, he told me, so if you like, you've got an job interview right now. We look for someone who is coordinating this project on innovation management training. All the other applicants didn't suit us, and I think it could be quite a nice choice. Okay, I went in, completely unprepared, but the topic was at the heart of at my heart, so I could enter into a talk and prove that I was the right one. And after the talk, the boss told me, if you like, you can start next week. And I thought I would do it for 1 year because I had my own company, but it's now 10 years. So this is the recruitment process. It has improved more to open and transparent standards right now, but still we rely a lot on spreading news in the network and rely a lot of getting access to people which we already have worked together, because the working environment is very cooperative. With respect to my PhD, in the current position, or in the position at that time, it was no plus and no minus. So lots of people in my company don't have a PhD, and especially my current boss, all of my bosses in the company didn't have a PhD, and our CEO also doesn't have a PhD. But nevertheless, it helped me, because it helped me through the 10 years, 12 years beforehand, because I built my own company. I did not have money, I did not have contacts, I only had my brain and I had my title. And I built my company on the knowledge what I have achieved with my PhD. So it's definitely, and my PhD definitely helped me even more after I finally learned that I sometimes accept to be called Frau Doctor. So, and that's something, yes, the PhD helps.
Okay, I can go on. I submitted my thesis in April 2015 and started looking for a job, started sending out applications the classical way. I'd say I sent about maybe 20 to 25 applications overall, got invited to one interview in Munich, didn't get the job, and then an ex-colleague from Paris, which I knew because I had been doing an internship there years ago, told me that the foundation I'm working at now are looking for someone. So it was like a classical job offer, but what I would never have heard of if I hadn't had that contact. So very important advice, do internships and stay in touch with your ex-colleagues because they're going to find you jobs. And so I got recruited on that job, approximately had about four or five applications, and they chose me. Not necessarily because of my not at all because of my PhD. The PhD wasn't a prerequisite for that position. It wasn't mentioned in the job offer at all. Nevertheless, it does obviously help if you work in research management to have a certain sensitivity for what researchers do, what their everyday work looks like, what their fears and their hopes and whatever are. It does give you a certain credibility as well if you're working with other researchers. If you've got the little PhD in your signature or in your email signature on your business card, it does help. Unfortunately, that's how it is. They do take you more seriously. It does give you a project, more credibility, and I do think that it does help you later in your career. I'd say in my case, it didn't help me to get the job, but it did help to become project leader. So it's something that doesn't help at the beginning, not at all. It might even be a little obstacle because you've got 5 years of useless experience, you're 5 years older than all the other applicants. But once you're in, it certainly helps to get up and to become to get more interesting tasks than before.
No, I think I can completely second that. I'll just briefly say how I was hired and then try to make some more general points about international organizations. So for the UN, very straightforward process. I was doing my master in international affairs in Geneva, started interning there for a year while doing my master, and when I graduated from the master degree, they kept me on as a consultant because I was already in the loop, and I was already part of the team. For NATO, it was completely random. I was doing my PhD at the time. Part of it was on multinational military cooperation, and I had one case study, which was the intervention in Afghanistan. So the head of the Afghanistan section from NATO came to give a speech at King's College London when I was doing where I was doing my PhD, and I interviewed him as part of my research, and we just hit it off. It was like excellent interview, and at the end of the interview, he told me, well, you know, we have a maternity cover at the moment, and we'll just like to come work for us for 3-4 months. And was, sure, why not? So I talked to my thesis supervisor whether it was a good idea or not. He told me, yes, do it. You'll have great access to data. It will be brilliant for the PhD, very interesting, and so on. So I came on as a maternity cover, stayed on longer than that as a consultant again, and was sent to Afghanistan also as a consultant. So I'm saying that because it emphasizes how the recruitment process works in international organizations. you have very few permanent positions. So it's standard to start off as consultant for several years before you land a permanent position. And the difficulty is to get the foot in the door, is to get the first entry-level job. It's very similar to what you said, in the sense that having the PhD doesn't help you having the foot in the door. What helps you is the random interaction you may have during your research or doing an internship or meeting someone, or so this network aspect of it. That will help you land your first consultant job. Then you will move from one consultant position to another for several years before you are already in a part of like the furniture, in a sense, and people naturally consider you when there is a permanent position that's opening up. Now, this is where the PhD is important, because for most international organizations, they have a standardized HR process in which they weight in differently the education you have. Having a PhD gives you a bonus. It just gives you more points when they score and rank the application. So when you are already part of the furniture, when you apply for the permanent position, having the PhD will help you, just secure the interview, go into the interview, and eventually get the job. And I completely agree with what you say. Having the PhD at first doesn't help, but it helps you break the ceiling glass of moving up. When you are already in the organization, it will help you having the more interesting project. People will take you more seriously. It's just part of how it is. So the bad news is that having the PhD doesn't help you having the first job. The good news is that it will help you move up faster.
I don't think I have much to add. My recruitment process was not very challenging. I think they got interested in me because I can, I have a PhD, but I have also a background in engineering, and so I could adapt to different topics. So they knew that probably I could fit in and do different things, which was the case at the beginning. For example, I worked on a call for proposals on mental health, which is really not my field at all. But yeah, having a PhD helps you to mature, and I think it's important. It was a plus. You interact with scientists more easily because you know how it works. And I think at ANR it's not mandatory anymore to have a PhD, but in my case I think it helped a lot, and that's it.
So just before giving you the floor to let you ask your question, just last question from my side regarding your mobility experience. Can you tell us maybe some advice on how to get a great postdoc? We discussed it when preparing this panel discussion, how you can get funded, some practical advice on how to prepare their mobility.
I think choosing where you want to go is very, very important. Which type of lab you want to join? A small lab, a big lab. What type of mentoring you need? I think it's good to try to gather some information about the lab you want to join. Again, networking is really important. And yeah, in my case, I chose, going to the UK, going to Cambridge seemed to me, an asset. It's quite prestigious. I had a Cancer Research UK postdoctoral grant. It was not very competitive, but still. Yeah, you really try to think it as deeply as you can, gather a lot of advice, and at some time, yeah, go ahead if you feel like it.
Yeah, I think I will second that. When I started my PhD, my thesis supervisor told me, if you want to have a career in academia, you cannot be picky as to where you live, because this is just how the market is. So that's the first thing to take into consideration, that you are going to move, if you want to have a career in academia, you are going to move, because this is part of the entire process. What was just said about the importance of gathering information on the research environment is extremely important. That's absolutely true. After I decided, I was working for NATO, decided to come back to academia, basically divide my salary by 4 and start paying taxes again, because I felt I wanted to research. So I went for a postdoc in Canada. And because I already knew some colleagues there, I knew I could work well with them. They would provide me with the right environment to do my research, publish my research, and land a job afterwards, which happened. But this is where the information gathering process is quite important, because you cannot take the risk to go for 1, 2, 3 years in a toxic work environment at this critical stage of your career, which is a postdoc, because it's at the postdoc moment that you are going to publish probably some of the exciting research you have been doing during the PhD, starting a new project, and really, grow up and establish yourself as independent researchers. So taking this risk of being in a toxic environment during this critical step of your career is it's a really high risk. So yeah, information gathering. When it comes to international organizations, you have to move, because this is what most of those big international organizations want you to do. In order to land a permanent position, it's important to have field experience. So going to one of the, in my case, because it's my field, one of those conflict environments, this is what's expected. I went to Afghanistan. I have some colleagues who are now in Ukraine, who are in Syria, well, wherever. And you have to be ready for that. You need to have that discussion with your partner, with your parents. Because, I went back to academia for a lot of reasons, because I think it was clearly the best way for me to grow as an individual. But one of the reasons was also the fact that my mom just could not take the fact that every single night she would look at the news, see whether there were dead people in Afghanistan, and whether I could be part of them. And I decided I could not impose that on her and on my partner. I just could not. So if you want to work for one of those international organizations in a conflict environment, that's also part of the reasoning you need to have. And this is something I tell my students all the time. I teach in the Master of International Security. So when I ask them, they're 22 and 23, would you consider going in one of those field environments? 95% of them say, yeah, of course. I'll do it for 6 months, 1 year, whatever. And then I guide them through all the reasonings they need to take. Did you think about your parents? Did you think about your partner? What happens if you see someone being shot in front of you? How will it react? And then there's second guess it. And this is part of the thinking that you need to have, because unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, it's part of the requirements to land a permanent position in one of those security organizations I was talking about.
It's a bit challenging to be the next one after this kind of experiences, but I can do it because I have some I have quite a boring mobility career. The first advice I could give is look out for opportunities, which I didn't do during my PhD. And the second one is take opportunities when they are given to you, which I did do in 2008. About this day of the year, 12th of December, I got the offer to spend half a year in Brussels for my company. I got the offer to accompany the regional representatives of Hamburg and Brussels. The lemon in it was I had to start on 8th of January. So formally I said, okay, I have to ask my husband first. But he couldn't have said no, because I had decided in the same moment when I got the opportunity that I would go. And he didn't say no, of course, otherwise he wouldn't be my husband anymore.
Yeah, when we talk about mobility, it's, yeah, we heard a lot that it's something that is really career-driven and oriented, but it has to suit you as well. I guess it's probably possible to do the things you like and at the same time staying in a place which you like, close to your family. But you really have to want to do it. Otherwise, it might be painful, and you also have to enjoy your life. I mean, this is the kind of decision you do before your 30s, usually. So it's part of the best moments of your life. So it's also important to think about your personal life. I mean, as far as we know for sure, we only get one life. So yeah, this is also important to think about yourself and what makes you feel good. This will help you in your career and what you want to do. So for me, because I like living abroad and discovering new things, of course, the decision I made was also based on the fact that I knew I would end up in an interesting place where I would learn a lot, but I also had to be okay with the place, otherwise this totally wouldn't have worked at all.
I don't have much to add to that, but I totally agree with you that you have to be fine with the mobility, but I also agree with Olivier, who said that it's sometimes sort of compulsory to be mobile, and not only in the academic world, but I'd say also outside, at least for a first job. I know that in my case it really helped to be able to be ready to move, which is obviously much easier if you don't have children or family or anything. So if you are able to move, it does help a lot, and it does help you to find interesting jobs quicker than if you are confined for whatever reason to a certain city or a certain region. So that's just how it is. It's not good news for those who can't move, but I'd say it does make things a lot easier. And in my case also, my mobility experience isn't as exotic and risky as Olivier's. I mean, I went from Germany to France, which is like not really exotic, but I'd still say that it does have certain advantages as well to be a foreigner or whatever in a certain environment, because it does, first of all, it does put you outside certain categories, which can be good, which can be something healthy, because every culture, every milieu has its rules, and if you come in there from the outside, you're not playing after the same rules. That can be good. You're sort of a bit of you're starting from zero, and you're not in the same you're not judged by the same categories than some of the others, which can be a healthy thing. And also having a bit of an international background and speaking reasonable English also helps you to get projects or tasks with an international implication. So in my case, I am now a member of the French National Contact Point for the Age 2020 program for social sciences and humanities, and that is also because I am sort of I got myself a bit of a mobility experience, and I am myself a foreigner and all that. So that does also can be actually a benefit and advantage to be to come in from the outside and to have to be a foreigner.
Now it's your turn. Do you have questions for our speakers?
First of all, I would like to thank all. We learned a lot from success stories,
It's very enriching conversation. This is Iman from Kuwait. I am boursier from Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development. We are also dealing with international institutions for funding projects all over the world for economic infrastructure to alleviate poverty. I'm doing my PhD for my first year here in Schema Business School, Lille campus, and I am, my background is from information. I did my master in Kuwait and I'm doing my PhD. I find myself in destiny now. I have passion for French language and I learned a lot since long time. I would like to ask about funding for postdoc, and what are the criteria that they are being accepted by the French Ministry of Research, how to be accepted. Is there certain criteria written for postdoc to get funded for such positions? I would like to ask this. Thank you so much.
Should I answer straight away? Yeah. I'm just going to answer very quickly because I don't know, I'm not very competent on that as well, but I don't think there's one French government postdoc funding program that you can apply for. There's a huge variety of programs from the ANR, from foundations, from universities, and so on, and they all have very, very different criteria, so we can't answer that question in just one or two sentences. If you have a look on Funded on the website, we have set up, they can find those funding opportunities, and then you can just read the criteria that you need to fulfill. So that's all I can tell you. There's not one big program that you can apply for. It doesn't work like that in France. The French research landscape is extremely diverse, and there's very different institutions, and they all got different criteria for research funding.
I'm not a specialist, but you have the Marie Curie program with postdoctoral funding, and I think you could probably look into that. Marie Curie? Yes?
Thank you. It's wonderful. Thank you for your sharing. And this conference is wonderful. My question is, when you were young, when you were a PhD, did you go to the conference like us and listen to people's sharing like this? Because you see, the PhDs, we are very busy, and we suffer very much. Maybe you too. So when you were young, when you were a PhD, did you spend your time walking around to search some conferences and try to get some information like us, like what we are doing now here? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm thinking about that as well. I remember during my PhD time, it was on the research center. We had a series of points to get for our PhD, and within the series of points, there were some activities. I don't recall the name, but we had interventions from patent officers to tell us what their job was. Probably some alumni who were now working in the industry, and unfortunately, back then, the only thing I was thinking was that I have to be at the lab. My gel is running. Why are we doing this? This is not helping me now. And yeah, this is probably true that when you're doing your PhD, you're running on you have your agenda is to finish, is to write up and to present and get your degree. Think about papers and things like that. And it seems like spending time listening to us is difficult to grasp whether it's going to be useful or not. But since you're here, it's because you feel you really need to open up to outside of the lab, because you feel you really have to. So yeah, I hope you're you enjoy this time now and you find it useful.
Hi, my name is Marianne. I'm coming from Novo Nordisk, which is a big pharmaceutical company. And all of you have taken the step beyond academia, which is really interesting to hear about. And of course, my question is, have you ever considered going into a big pharmaceutical company? If yes, why? And if no, why not?
There are 2 points. The one point is I was politically very much engaged in the time when I finished my PhD, and pharmaceutical companies did not have that good reputation in our eyes. So there was some difficulty for me to think about a career in a pharmaceutical company. On the other hand, as I told, I didn't have the opportunity, because at that time it was definitely from one day to the other, the large chemical companies, which were pharmaceutical companies in Germany at that time, closed their doors for any PhDs. Yeah, but nowadays I would completely think differently about it.
Can I just, well done. I think it's always, for me, I think it's a matter of opportunity and also random things in life. Where, in the first days of my postdoc, I received a telephone call from Montpellier, where I did my PhD, and it was from Sanofi, and they offered, you know, me a postdoc position, but I said, I'm sorry, I'm in Cambridge. Thank you very much, bye-bye. And you know, when I was suffering during my postdoc, I really regretted it. And yeah, I think, yeah, it's, if you want to do it, I think it's very good. And if I could have done it, probably I would have.
Yeah, same for me. I did never consider it, but I didn't exclude it either. And I think they always, if you're from the social sciences and humanities, you sometimes read that, yeah, your skills are needed in the big companies, communication and da 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 da. But you can't really see yourself in that environment. It's something that's so far away from your own imaginary, especially if you're in research in this very sort of cozy research environment, and you can't really picture yourself working. And what would I be doing in that kind of company? So it's maybe also to the enterprises and to the companies to come towards the social science and humanities departments to tell us what we can also sort of what are the skills that you need actually, because you don't always realize what you have learned and what the skills that you can offer to companies. So in my case, I would say I'm happy to get a couple more years of work experience where I am now, and then maybe rethink the issue.
Hi. I'm a PhD student, and obviously I think I'm not exactly sure which direction I want to take in the future, like a lot of other PhD students. So my question is, do you have any regrets about leaving academia? And what do you think are the biggest pros and cons about leaving academia for other careers?
So maybe I can take it because I came back to academia. I think the moment I realized I wanted to come back to academia was when, during one of those meetings in Brussels, I was facilitating the discussions between the diplomats, and I realized I was much more interested in the process than in the outcome. I was much more interested in why one of them was saying that it was a strategic move to get the others to do that, and was fascinated just by the observation of this. And I paid less and less attention to the policy outcome, which was a document that should have been signed in the end. When I realized that, I told myself, okay, I mean, you cannot really force it. This is what you like. As you can guess from my back and forth between academia and policy making, it took me some time to make up my mind. But the moment I realized that, I went for it. And it's a very there is a number of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that I really enjoy teaching. It's something you have to like, I think, to be successful academics. I think that a number of colleagues go to academia because, I don't know, it's more convenient, it's more, I don't know, prestigious because they have professor in front of their name, but they don't like teaching. I'm really sad for them because I think that teaching is, at least to me, is something I find extremely rewarding to have this yearly exchange with students. So there's also something I like about academia is that I'm my own boss. I research whatever I want. And that's a luxury that is extremely valuable. I find extremely valuable. When I was working in policymaking, you know, you eat what's on your plate. So you need to learn about a lot of different topics. And in itself, it's challenging, it's interesting, but at some point, you know, you feel intimately that you want to engage deeply with one single topic, and academia allows that. The third thing, and to me that was, I realized afterwards that it was quite important. It was not part of my decision to come back to academia, but I realized afterwards it was quite important, is that I get to speak freely and participate in public debates on my own terms. In the sense that just being now a professor and recognized in my field as one of the persons who produce research in that area, you know, I get to have policy influence in the sense that policymakers seek out advices. I got invited to talk to members of parliaments, to ministers, and so on, and I can, you know, speak freely. If I were in the French Ministry of Defense or an A2 or an A3, which is a grade within NATO, I will be implementing policies, but I will not have influence to shape them to some degree. And afterwards, I realized that being in academia gives you that freedom, that you can speak freely and you don't have to report back to a chain of command. All those, I realize, are quite important for me. There are also drawbacks, right? There are the fact that you are under constant pressure to find funding, that, you know, marking exams is not super fun, of course, but that's a very personal decision. It's just that at some point you need to realize what's most important for you. One, to me, it was this autonomy and freedom that I experienced in academia. I did not experience in policymaking. But some people are more interested in policy implementation, and that's great. And so this is, I think, how you may want to think about it, I guess.
I still regret that I'm not in academia, though I have my dream job, but that's not difficult for me to have a dream job anyway. But I still regret that I didn't have the chance to have a career in academia. But my academic career was at its end before it had begun. And that was because my environment wasn't supportive at all. I'm the only PhD in our family. So there was no one who could help me. The supportive system was worse than today. And I didn't think enough. I just continued my research, and as a chemist, you do your PhD. And it was, I think, in the second or third year of my PhD, then I thought, oh, teaching is really excellent. Staying in research, that's excellent. And then I started to look around, and then I found out you should have thought about it earlier because you chose the wrong supervisor. Then you don't have a network. You forgot to go to conferences. Your marketing abilities are not very well established. And then there was one thing I think many of you also have. I had 2 children, and I said, do I really want to be unemployed with the age of 42? And all these were reasons why I skipped this idea very, very early. in the end, I was unemployed with 42. And in the end, yes. And what I just can do now is tell you, make your plans, look around. I think I would have become a fantastic teacher. I don't know whether I would have become a fantastic researcher, but I would have become a fantastic teacher. But if you do the mistakes in the wrong time, you can't correct anyone.
Maybe just to continue on that, I totally agree with what both of you said. I'm not sure if there's mistakes you can make that you can't correct. I don't know, maybe it's naive to say that, but I'd say you can always change what you've done. I'd say the two main things you should bear in mind is, first of all, what Olivier said, the autonomy thing, like you have got an intellectual and a time management autonomy when you're in research that you don't have anywhere else, and you need to decide if you're comfortable with that or not. That has good things and bad things. It's nice as well to have a boss who tells you what to do sometimes. You don't have to take all the decisions by yourself. It's nice to have deadlines, as I said, and that sort of stuff. It's nice to have a certain environment, certain framework you're working in, which you don't always have in research. And the second, that's the autonomy argument, and the second argument is indeed the job security argument. I'm the only one of all my colleagues at university who has a permanent contract by now. They're all sort of struggling with short-term postdoc contracts and all that. I think that's the same in any country, maybe except in the US, but in all European countries, research is extremely precarious job environment, and that's just how it is. That's very regrettable, but you should bear that in mind. It's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, and in terms of job security. And on a more personal level, to answer your question, do I regret it? I would say I do have second thoughts. I'm only 2 years post-PhD, so I'd like to think I could still go back and go for a PhD. I'm trying to do some sort of part-time research and publish a bit here and there and do book reviews and that sort of stuff to sort of stay in. So come back in 5 years and ask me if that worked.
Then thank you very much for sharing with us your experience as a PhD. Thank you very much again for your talk and your sharing experience. And now we will have lunch on the other side, of course, and we start again here in the same room at 2 p.m. Thank you very much.